So now we will talk about Plato's view on poetry, which is in book 10 that he has specifically mentioned. Plato, as you all know, he did not like poetry, even though he was a good poet himself. Okay, so in this, we are going to talk about what was his views on poetry. Why did he attack poetry? Okay, so, as you can see, in Republic, Book 10, Plato presents a strong criticism on poetry and art. So, Plato, he did not like poetry, even though he himself was a very good poet. And in his work, Dialogues, he used poetic lines as well. But Plato, he strongly criticizes poetry in this work, The Republic, especially if you see in Book 10 as well as in Book 2 as well. So, the question over here arises that why did he criticize poetry? Why did he try to censure it? Okay, so I'll give you all the reasons one by one that he shared that he disliked poetry. The reason one says that poetry is an imitation, which means mimesis. So, poetry, according to him, is a copy of reality. Reality itself, if he says, is actually already something which is imperfect. So, poetry becomes the copy of the copy. So, therefore, it is not truth, it's only an illusion. So, according to Plato, the real world which we see is actually corrupt, it's imperfect, and the ideal world, which is in our mind, is the one which is absolutely pure. It contains the perfect form. It cannot be corrupted or changed. So, the first idea that comes in our mind is the purest reality. And everything else that we see in front of us, the physical world, the paintings, everything, they all are degraded versions of the reality. So, poetry, according to him, is an imitation, it's a copy of the real world. But real world itself is already imperfect according to him. So poetry, obviously, it becomes copy of the copy. Therefore, it is not at all real, it's not at all truth. So according to poetry, there are three levels of reality: the ideal form, which is the perfect truth. Then comes the physical world, which is the copy of the ideal form which is in our mind. And if there is an art or a poetry, that becomes a copy of the physical world. Next reason that he says is that poetry is illusion. So it is not based on any logic or reason. It is based merely on imagination. It shows the false world. It creates emotional fantasies. Okay, for example, unreal romantic expressions that the poets show, they show unreal, emotional exaggeration. So poetry, it comes from imagination. But Plato says that even imagination, it can be distorted. So poetry, it is not at all truth. It moves away from the reality. So poetry, it focuses on, making things up. Instead of searching for the truth, poetry actually creates an imaginary scenario in front of you. For example, you would have heard many songs in which the singer is saying about that I will die for your love, my breath, it lives, in your heart forever. So Plato here, the his problem is that, these are not logically possible. It's completely, made up, it's completely unrealistic. So he calls it as a very fabricated kind of emotional illusion that the poets or the singers want to portray in front of us. According to Plato, poetry, it fabricates the unreal situation, it exaggerates the emotion, it moves people away from the truth. So poetry, it becomes illusion, it is all about fantasy, it's all about false representation. Okay, the next point says that poetry, it misleads people. Okay, poetry, it influences people and, negatively, and it misleads people, it creates false beliefs, it gives unrealistic kind of expectations, it encourages the people to believe imaginary ideas. So poetry does not show you the, reality, it actually shows the illusion, the false image in front of you. It, actually excites the the mind, the emotions. It creates emotional disturbances. It disturbs the rational thinking that we have. It does not present the real truth in front of us. It actually makes people emotionally unstable. So poetry, if according to Plato, it fills the mind with a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings, which ultimately leads to the loss of the rational thinking. People, they start believing the false ideas. They get emotionally carried away. So according to Plato, poet, they live in their own fantasy world. They write things that is not connected to actual reality. The unreal love expressions that the poet shows, the dramatic emotional exaggeration that the poet shows, it's all false. So poetry, it creates false ideas in the society. People start believing wrong concepts. These ideas, it's actually not good for the society according to Plato. Next reason is it appeals to emotions, not reasons. So poetry, it encourages love, passion, emotional thinking in a person. According to poet Plato, he divides the human soul into two parts. One is the rational part, and the other one is the emotional or the passionate kind of part. He believes that reason is the one which should control the emotion. But poetry, on the other hand, it strengthens the passion. It weakens the intellect. It encourages emotional surrender. In the ancient times, also, emotions were not considered good. Rational control was much admired, especially for the men. Crying was discouraged. Emotional expression was seen as a weakness. Normally, in today's society, also, when we see that boys are told that you should not cry, they expect the boys to be brave, whereas the girls are allowed to express emotions, and the girls are considered as weak, and the boys are considered as more strong, more bold. So emotions is not said to be good according to Plato. Society, it always tried to build males as brave, males as building them more stronger. So society, it discouraged the emotions in the men. And poetry, on the other hand, it makes people more soft and encourages emotional expression in the people. So Plato saw this as weakening the courage and the bravery. He says that poetry makes people soft, emotional, and according to Plato, this weakness, it weakens the courage, the bravery in a person. Poetry, according to Plato, is more feminine. It makes the men more feminine. Okay, it promotes emotional sensitivity, passion, and he believes that this actually makes the men less courageous. Okay, so he did not support poetry because it makes them more emotional. Next is that he says that he it corrupts the morality. So Plato believed that literature, it influences the character. In Republic, Socrates also said that impression formed in youth leaves the permanent mark. It fills the mind with sensual ideas, emotional distraction, and it weakens the ethics and the moral discipline. So poetry, it promotes sensuality. It encourages love, desire, passion, lust, revenge, violence, immorality, cruelty, and it leads the people towards more of sensuous feeling and emotional intentions. So people, they keep thinking more about love, about emotions, instead of developing courage, instead of being rational. So poetry, it targets the emotion, the passions, and not the logic. Okay, so Plato, he preferred logic, he preferred rational thinking, and that is why he objected poetry. Young minds, they imitate what they see, and bad stories might corrupt the society. He especially disliked poetry where good people, they suffer and the wicked people, they prosper. So according to Plato, literature, it must teach virtue, and art should improve the citizen more morally, not emotionally. Next is it keeps people in illusion. So this idea, it connects to Plato's famous allegory of the cave. In the cave also, we saw that prisoners, they mistake the shadow for the reality. So similar to the cave, the poetry also becomes a shadow of the world, a world of illusion, a barrier to the knowledge. So poetry, it keeps the people in illusion, just like the allegory of the cave. The poetry, it keeps the people, trapped in false reality, in illusions. And next, we see is that Plato's view on dramatic poetry. Plato, he attacks not only poetry but also drama. He believed that actors, they perform immoral characters, they repeatedly imitate the evil behavior. For example, coward, criminals, villains. So he believed that this repeated imitations that they do, it might shape the future generation, their personality. They would see this and they will behave and learn from that. Actors and audience, they absorb this immoral traits from the actors. So therefore dramatic poetry was even more dangerous according to Plato. Next is his criticism on comedy. Plato, he rejects comedy and he questions what is that there in it a painful scene that causes pleasure. He says he says that the people, they laugh at the weakness of the fellow men. They laugh at the ugly men, coward men, foolish men. Instead of, they must feel pity on them. So Plato, he rejects this kind of comedy as malicious. He did not like it that people are making fun of other people. Instead of teaching them something, they are making fun of them. So he disliked comedy as well. Next, we are going to talk about the censorship of poetry. Plato, he suggested, the restriction on harmful kind of poetry. Not all poets needs to be banned, but only the ones that are spreading harmful ideas. Poetry, as according to Plato, should teach moral lessons. It should provide knowledge and not just, pure entertainment or emotional indulgence. So Plato's ideal state, it required more of discipline, morality, rational citizens. Okay, he believed that poetry, it lacked all these things: political usefulness, moral discipline. And after criticizing poetry, Plato suggests that it should actually be restricted. And the most important thing, he says that not remove all the poets. He is only targeting on the poets who spread harmful ideas, who are actually corrupting the society. So Plato thought that unrestricted poetry could weaken the state itself, because the condition of the poetry at during that time when Plato was writing, or when Plato was there, had declined in the quality. People, they did not respect it much. So even the poetry, it should be didactic according to Plato. That's something, it will teach something. And other people also believe the same thing. Plato, he belongs to the category who believed that it should be didactic, it should teach something. Whereas there were other poets also who believed that poetry should be appreciated for only their beauty, only their art. But Plato, he did not support this view. He believed that poetry should be didactic, means it should teach some lesson. Okay, so on one hand, we learned that Plato, he rejects the poets and the poetry, and on the other hand, he is glorifying the mathematicians and the philosophers. Plato says that everything mathematicians says are actually, they are verified, whereas the poets world is it's actually an imitation. And an individual, it cannot be turned into better citizens by just reading poetry. And he also says that philosophy is taken into consideration according to Plato, that poetry cannot reach the position which a philosopher has. And he says that according to Plato, ordinary people, they live in the world of appearance, the physical world, the changing society, imperfect reality, the sensory experience. But the truth, according to him, is beyond all these senses that we feel. Mathematicians, they become important over here because they train the mind to think abstractly. Okay, according to Plato, numbers are not just physical objects. Geometrical ideas are perfect and universal. Mathematical truths, they do not change, just by something has happened and they change. They are abstract and they, remain over there. So Plato believed that mathematicians are, they are, is a training ground for the philosophers. In book 7, if we say, of the Republic, there are subjects like arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, harmonics. They are all included in the education of the future philosopher kings. Their purpose is not just merely practical. Plato does not teach mathematics for just for trade, for business, or for engineering alone. Instead, mathematics, it, disciplines the intellect. It develops the rational thinking. It teaches the mind to seek, a permanence and the order. So mathematicians help the soul, turn from becoming towards being, from illusion towards truth. Okay. So Plato, he admired these mathematicians deeply, but he also believed that, philosophers are higher than mathematicians. Do you know why? Because mathematicians, being with assumptions, accept the, accept the things without questioning them. They use diagrams and symbols. They, stop at logical conclusions. But philosophers, they go beyond this. They use didactics, they use dialects, the highest, which is the highest method of reasoning. Dialects means, questioning assumptions, examining the contradiction, searching for, the principles, moving towards ultimate truth. So for Plato, the philosophers alone, they can grasp the highest reality, that is the form of good. It is actually the source of truth, the source of knowledge, the source of reality itself. So just like, the sun, it illuminates the visible objects, the good, it actually illuminates the intangible reality. Mathematicians, they help the mind move upwards, but philosophy, it completes the journey. So mathematicians, they prepare the mind, but philosophy, it actually reveals the ultimate reality. Okay. In Republic, also in book 2, if we see, Socrates says that any impression we choose to make leaves a permanent mark. But when poetry is taken into consideration, it does not provide any moral grounds, and it presents, revengeful, lustful, and cruel things, which definitely creates bad impressions in the mind of the people. Plato does not reject or object the children being, told untrue stories. He rejects poetry only on two reasons, that the one is the immoral and the other is the falsehood of poetry. He also says that, it is painful to see both virtue and vice, they are treated alike, because it protects the wrong things, like a good person, will always suffer. Lives of wise men are more happy, which you would have also seen in the real life. So Plato believes that these kind of literature may corrupt the people. And even in the School of Abuse by Stephen Gosson, he has attacked poetry. And his arguments are that a man can use his time in a better way than in poetry. Poetry is the mother of lies and a nurse of abuse. This is said by Stephen Gosson in his work School of Abuse. So, for the final conclusion, if we say that according to Plato, poetry is an imitation, it's an illusion. It misleads the people, it encourages the emotion, it weakens the morality. Therefore, Plato, he criticizes poetry. He suggests that, it should be restricted. We should restrict the harmful poets. It allows poetry only for educational and the moral purposes, not for entertainment. So, according to Plato, the production of art is not useful for molding the character for the well being of the state, but negatively it spoils the individual and the society. That is why Plato, he did not prefer poetry. And I've given you a multiple reasons which Plato shared that why he did not like poetry. Now we are going to look into his most important theory of imitation, which is also called as theory of mimesis. Okay, so in the work Republic, explains that art is not true reality. It is something which is twice removed from reality. So this idea is closely connected to his theory of mimesis. Mimesis means imitation or copying something. So through this theory, Plato, he tries to show us that art, it does not represent truth. Actually, it is copying the appearance. It is making things unreliable. It is actually misleading things. So there are two types of art according to Plato. One is art that is only for pleasure, like literature, painting, music, sculpture. So all these are art that is done for pleasure. Another kind of art, which is a useful art, like medicine, agriculture, all these are useful art. So according to him, the art meant for pleasure are only just an imitation. It's just a mimesis, and it does not contribute to any true knowledge or reality. So I have written it down for you. Mimesis means imitation or copying of something. And he uses this term to explain that art, it does not create anything very original. It is just simply, copying things and presenting it in front of you. Now, Plato, he understood that human beings, they learn things by, copying others. For example, as a small child, you would see that he or she sees his or her mother, and when she's talking on the phone, he also, after some time, you'll notice that the child also goes and picks up the phone and tries to, do something blah blah on it and tries to copy the mother. You might have also seen that father is there and father is writing something and with the pen, so he also goes and picks it up and tries to, just imitate by, drawing something on the paper and trying to copy the father. So the child, he learns by observing and copying the others. So learning, it starts through copying others. When you are a child, parents, they repeatedly say mama mama, say papa. So the child, keeps on hearing it, and then it, produces that sound, mama, papa, dada, isn't it? So this shows that human beings, they begin through imitation. Speaking itself is, it starts from copying the sound that we hear. So according to Plato, imitation, it is natural to human beings. They copy actions, languages, behaviors, and habits also. So but Plato, he does not, appreciate this very positively. This is a very important point that you should keep in mind, that even though imitation helps us in learning, but Plato, he does not see this as, or he does not fully praise this artistic imitation. According to Plato, art, it only copies the appearance. Okay, it is not the truth what it is represented. So that is why he says that art, it is twice removed from reality. At times you'll see somewhere written that it is twice removed, at times you'll see it is thrice removed. So I've written it down for you that it is twice or thrice removed from reality according to Plato. And this he proves by giving the example of the chair, which you need to keep in mind. Okay, chair is the example that he gave. Now, I've presented a picture in front of you. You can see the image over here. This that you can see over here is the idea that we have in our head, the idea of the ideal chair that is there. Next comes the physical chair, which the carpenter, he has that idea and then he puts it down and he, does it with the wood and all. So it is the physical object that he presents in front of you. And the third one that you can see over here is the painting. So when somebody, when a painter, he sees a physical object, he tries to imitate that and, paint it in front of you. So that is thrice removed from reality. So the first thing that you can see, that is in your mind, the ideal vision, the vision that you see in your head, that okay, it has to be like this, it should be, four legs, it should be made of, very good cushioning and all that, nice wooden texture. So that is the ideal chair that is in your head. So that is one form. Second comes the physical. Okay, you have seen that. So then you go to the shop and buy, something which is related to your ideal vision. That is the physical object, which is the second level. Okay, that is an imitation of the first one. Then somebody comes to your home, some painter, your friend who is a painter, he comes and he sees that, oh wow, this is such a beautiful chair, let me paint it. At least I cannot buy it, but I'll paint it for you, or I'll paint it, it's very beautiful. So he paints it up. So that is the third level, okay, the third imitation that is done. So idea in the mind is the first or the most pure form. Then comes the physical form, that is the second level, and the third is the painting, that is the third level. This is what Plato has said. So according to Plato, what are the imitative views of art? So the ideal form is the first one, that is the idea of the chair that exists in the mind. This idea is very perfect, it is very pure and very ideal. Okay, and then comes the second form, that is the physical form. Physical form is that the carpenter, he uses wood, and he creates a real chair in front of you. It is not perfect that you saw in your vision, but it is something related to that. It is, it has some lacks in it, but overall it is okay. So this is the the already it is the copy of the idea that was there in your head, which the carpenter has made in front of you. Next comes the third level, that is the painting. So the painter, he draws a painting of the chair in front of you. So this is the copy of the copy. Understood? Copy of the copy. So Plato says that the painter has not created anything very original. It is actually copying something which is already copied. Okay, copying something which is already copied. So art or painting is something which is far away from the truth. Is that clear? Plato argues that the artist, it does not create anything original, only imitates what is already existing. So art is far away from the truth. Is that okay? So Plato is annoyed because, according to him, the purest form is the idea that is there in your head. Even the real chair that is in front of you, physical form, it is also imperfect. Okay, imperfect from the ideal chair that was there in your vision. And the painting that you see in front of you, it is again even worse than the physical chair. So art, it becomes more less real, it becomes less truthful. Then we see that there are three levels of reality. So world of forms, that is the highest level that we see. Okay, which is it perfectly perfect reality exists in the world of this idea and forms, perfect beauty, perfect justice, perfect kind of material that is there in our head. So this is the highest truth. Example, the idea of the chair that was there in your head. Next comes the physical world, that is the second level. So this object around us that we see, it is actually only imperfect copies of the perfect form. For example, the carpenter makes the chair in front of you, that is the physical form. And the third is the world of art. Okay, that is the lowest form, such as art, painting, poetry. So this is the copy of the physical world. It's just an imitation of the imitation. So artists, they imitate the physical object. Therefore, art becomes a copy of the copy. Again, I have presented a picture in front of you. For example, the real thing is the Adidas. Okay, but then you see the first copy. The first copy is that somebody would have made the first copy. That is Abby Bars. That is written over here. Okay, Abby Bars. And the third one is the drawing of that Adidas. Okay, it is a drawing. So it becomes the third copy. Is that clear? So here also I have presented a picture. You can take a screenshot. The Plato's theory of mimesis. Okay, the world of the form, that is the ideal chair. Then the physical world, which is the real chair, and art, which is the imitation. Okay, art is thrice removed from the reality. So this is the ideal chair, this is the real chair, and this is the painted chair. Okay, so with this picture, it will be very perfectly clear for you. What does it mean? The theory of mimesis. Next. Okay, now, so with this theory of mimesis, we learned, I can give you one more example. That imagine that there is a original truth that you see in front of you is the real face. Okay, the original truth, there is another example which I can give, that the original truth is the real face in front of you. The physical world will be the photograph that I've taken. The art will be the painting, that is, or drawing of that photograph. So each stage, it moves, farther from the reality. So that is why Plato says that art, it is twice or thrice removed from reality. He accepts that fact that human, they naturally imitate. So Plato rejects art as unreliable, as something which is. So I'll give you one more example. For example, original truth that is there. So original truth will be, for I'll give you another example. The original truth will be the real truth in front of you, or the real. I'll give you another example. The original truth will be the real face. Okay, the physical world will be the photograph that is taken of that face, and the art will be the drawing from that photograph that you have taken. So each stage, you can see it moves farther from the reality. So that is why Plato said that art is something which is twice or thrice removed from the reality.